So now let's see the female reproductive system. So now, compared to the male, the female reproductive system is designed to carry out several functions. Okay, so not only the thing like reproduction is a complex process. So obviously, whatever functions or whatever things are necessary for the same, this female reproductive system is designed for all the purposes. So basically, the female reproductive system produces what? Egg. That is also called as ovum or ova. Okay, so in biological term, again, it's also called as oocytes. Okay, like spermatozoa for the sperms, in the same way ova or oocytes for the egg also it's called as. So usually what happens is a female reproductive system is designed in such a way that whatever the egg which is produced inside a ovary will go towards the respective place for the process of the fertilization. So normally whatever the fertilization, or you can say conception process is there, this occurs in fallopian tubes. Okay, means the fertilization of egg by sperm occurs in the fallopian tube. So once this has been fertilized, what happens to that fertilized egg? The fertilized egg will go into the uterus and it will implant itself over there. So once the implantation is successfully carried out, then starts the process of what? Or stages of what? Pregnancy. But what if the fertilization or implantation will not take place? So at that time, that female will undergo through a process called as menstruation. Okay, so if the fertilization or implantation does not take place, the female reproductive body is designed to menstruate. So it is nothing but, menstruation is nothing but shedding of uterine lining. Okay, plus only in males there is just one hormone, okay, that is testosterone. But in the females, okay, there are two important hormones, that is the progesterone as well as what? Estrogen. So little more complex system is that of the what? Female body. So what happens is once the sperm enters into the female reproductive part, and once a pregnancy has been achieved, the entire body of that female will undergo what? Multiple changes. Okay, so that is how it's called as a complex system as compared to the males. So let's see what are the parts of a female reproductive system. So the first one is ovaries. So usually there are a pair of ovaries, and this is nothing but a primary sex organ which is located in the lower part of abdominal cavity. Okay, so if you see, so from here, So this is how basically it looks like. Okay. So usually if you see here in this part, there will be ovaries like this. This finger-like structure is going to hold the ovaries. Okay. So two ovaries. Okay. This is nothing but the uterus. This is the cervix. This one is the vagina. And this is the fallopian tube. Okay. So ovaries are nothing but the primary sex organ which is going to produce eggs or ova. So what happens is, this is basically this organ, the entire this organ is present where? In the lower abdominal cavity of a female, that is near to the kidneys you will find them. So each ovary is connected through a ligament to the uterus. You can see over here this thing. This is only the, what? The ligaments. So this ligament is for the connection of this ovaries to the uterus. Okay, so basic function of the ovaries is what? To produce eggs plus certain hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. Okay, so basically this ovaries have something which is called as ovarian follicles. Ovarian follicles. Now, what is this ovarian follicles? Ovarian follicles means the follicles which is going to contain eggs. Okay. So, if monthly that particular egg is produced and if it is not released from the follicle, then it may lead to certain disease which is called as PCOD, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay, so basically when a baby girl is born, what happens is it will be having what? Certain immature eggs inside it. Okay, means that baby girl, okay, ovaries will be having what? Thousands of immature eggs already present inside them. So once that girl attains the puberty stage, what will happen? Every month, puberty stage means what? When the girl gets the first menstruation is called as the puberty age in girls. So once that happens, what will happen? Every month one egg will be produced from one of the ovary. Like for example, if this month it is from the right ovary, from the next month left ovary, then again right ovary, left ovary, like that. Okay, it is not that from the same ovary only the egg will be produced every month. So whatever this release of the eggs are there from the ovary, that process is called as what? Ovulation. Ovulation. So what is ovulation? It's nothing but the release of egg from ovary. Okay, so here also contraction of that muscles will take place of the, what do you say, ovaries, and what will happen is that follicles will release the egg. So because of that contraction happens in such a way, what will happen is this egg which is produced over here will contract and it will get released into this fallopian tube. Okay, so that is how the egg is forced inside the fallopian tube. So basically, as I told you, that in the fallopian tube only whatever the fertilization process, that is the meeting of the sperm with the egg is there, that will take place. Okay, so the process of formation of the egg is called as what? Oogenesis. Oogenesis. Okay, this is nothing but the process of formation of egg. So in male, it's called as spermatogenesis. Genesis means formation. And in female, it's called as oogenesis. Okay, so this is all about what? The ovaries. Next comes the second part, which is the fallopian tube. Okay, so this fallopian tube is nothing but a narrow tube. Okay, which you will find that it is attached to upper part of uterus. And what is the main function of this fallopian tube is? it will act as a tunnel for the eggs to travel to uterus. Okay, and it is obviously a major site of what? Fertilization. Okay, so once the egg is fertilized over here, then it will go into the next part, which is called as what? Uterus. Basically referred as womb. Okay, now once the egg is fertilized, it should get implanted inside the uterus. If it is not implanted, again, what will happen is the pregnancy will not occur. That is, if you see over here, this is the uterus. So here that egg should implant itself inside. Means dig the particular uterine wall and place itself there. Then only the pregnancy stage will start. So usually this part, that is the uterus, is a large, hollow, muscular and vascular pear-shaped structure. Okay, why it's hollow and muscular is, hollow means at the time of pregnancy, baby grows inside, so obviously it should be hollow. Then only one more thing is muscular and vascular means what? Obviously, when the size of the baby will grow, the uterus has to expand. So muscularity is very important for the same. Okay, and vascular because the blood supplies are required for during the pregnancy to the baby. So hence these characteristics, that is large, hollow, muscular, vascular, and pear shape. So this particular part you will find in the pelvis, means between the bladder and the rectum, this particular part is present. So usually this uterus has been divided into three parts, or it is formed in three parts. Okay, it is formed in three parts. The first one is called as fundus. Okay, fundus is nothing but the upper dome part, okay, above the openings of fallopian tube. That is, this part is called as what? The fundus. Then second one is the body or corpus. Okay, this is basically the middle part. Okay, so here it is having a wall which is called as peritoneal layer or perimetrium. Okay, so if you see the inside of the uterus, this part, okay, here three layers it will be having, or three lining, that is the outer layer, middle layer and inner layer. Like the three linings this corpus or body is having. So out of which the first layer which is there is called as what? Perimetrium. Okay, this is what? The first layer. Then you have a middle muscular layer which is called as myometrium. Okay, this is what? The second layer or the middle layer. Okay, so this is basically muscular layer. Okay, and it is also made up of what? Smooth muscles. Plus the third layer, which is the inside layer called as endometrium. Okay, this is glandular layer. So glands will be having. Okay, so three layers of a uterus. That is, the outer layer is perimetrium, middle layer is myometrium, and the inner layer is the endometrium. Then the next part is the cervix. So cervix is nothing but the lower narrow part. Okay, so usually the body opens, means whatever the mouth of the uterus which is there, that is nothing but this cervix, which is also called as what? External OS. External OS. So, whatever the sperm is going to enter into the uterus will be through the mouth of the uterus, which is called as what? The cervix. Then the last one, which is there, is the vagina. Okay, so this is basically nothing but a elastic muscular tube. Okay, so during the copulation process, the penis is inserted inside the vagina, and from there, when the semen is released, the sperm goes into this female reproductive part, and all these things happen. Okay, so usually this vagina is also called as what? Birth canal. Why it's called as birth canal is, if it's a natural or a normal delivery, then the baby will come out through this vagina or the birth canal. That is why it is what? Highly elastic muscular tube-like structure. So apart from the parts of the female thing, obviously here there are certain glands, okay, which are present in female, which is called as Bartholin gland. Now, what is this Bartholin gland? Bartholin gland, like how the, as I told you that in the male, whatever the semen is there, it helps in what? Lubrication of the vaginal wall of the female. In the same way, in Bartholin's gland, what happens is, it will also secrete clear, a clear viscous fluid for lubrication purpose. Okay, so these are all what? The parts of the female reproductive system. Now, as I already told you, if a particular egg is not fertilized, it will undergo what? The process of menstruation. So that is called as what? Menstrual cycle. Now, what is this menstrual cycle? See, usually every month a girl has to undergo this cycle, which is called as a menstrual cycle. So this is basically a cyclic phase of the flow of blood with mucus and tissues from uterus of women at monthly intervals. So what happens is, the inner layer which is there, endometrium, that will shed. Okay, and that shedding leads to what? The menstruation thing. Okay, so basically the menstruation year is 12 to 14. And it will stop like at a age of say 45 to 50. Again, depending upon the female body, okay, and hormones. So there are certain phases how the menstruation occurs in. Okay, so the first phase which is there is the menstrual phase or bleeding phase. So this is what basically the first phase. Okay, and the duration is somewhat 5 to 7 days. The menstruation will take place. Okay, and again it depends from female to female. For some 5 to 7, for some 2 to 3 days, like that. Okay, so during this menstrual phase, certain hormones, okay, come into role. That is the hormones like estrogen, progesterone, then FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone, then LH, that is luteinizing hormone. Okay, all these hormones will be present in minute quantities during the menstrual phase. Okay, so whatever the flowing of the blood is there, that is only called as a menstrual or the bleeding phase. Then after this phase comes the second one, which is called as proliferative phase. Proliferative phase. So proliferation happens over here. Means, now as I told you, in the menstrual phase, little amount of all the hormones have been produced. So in the proliferative phase, what happens is, whatever the FSH, that is the follicle stimulating hormone is there, it is going to what? Develop and mature the Graafian follicles. Now, as I already told you, in the ovaries, follicles are present, which is going to produce egg. Correct? So, if the egg is not fertilized, then that female will undergo menstrual cycle. That is menstruation. That is the first phase. But once the menstruation is over, again, obviously, the egg has to get produced. So, for that purpose only, in the proliferative phase, what happens is this FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone, it will help in the development and maturation of a follicle, which is called as Graafian follicle. Plus, in this phase, what happens is the hormone estrogen rises. Means the level of this hormone estrogen, what will happen is it will rise. And because of the rise in hormone estrogen, what happens is it will form new endometrium. Okay, so this phase lasts for about 10 to 14 days. Okay, and here at this phase, endometrium wall will be very thin, and this phase is also called as what? Follicular phase. Now, okay, the follicles have been matured and it has been developed. So once the follicle will develop, what it is going to produce is the egg. So the next phase, that is the third phase, will be what? Ovulation phase. So in ovulation phase, what is going to happen? Ovulation. That is, for this, two hormones will be responsible. That is FSH and LH. That is luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. At this stage, because the ovulation is happening, hence the thin endometrium will become what? Thick. So thickening of endometrium means this stage only the endometrium will be the thickest. And as I told you, this will last for about 14 days. Then after this process comes the fourth and the last process, you can say, that is called as the secretory phase. Secretory phase. So secretory phase, in this both the hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone, will be very high. The reason is, for the purpose of fertilization or for the purpose of pregnancy, these two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, is very important through the entire pregnancy. Hence, in the secretory phase, what happens is the levels of these two hormones gets increased. So what happens over here? Here, fertilization takes place. Okay. Suppose in this secretory phase, there is no fertilization, then at the 28th day of menstrual cycle, menstruation will start. Okay, so there are certain terms, okay, which are used for this purpose, which is nothing but menarche and menopause. So what is this menarche and menopause? Menarche means is the commencement of menstruation, means the starting, okay, of menstruation at puberty. Whereas menopause means the stoppage of menstruation. That is basically, I told you, 45 to 50 years. Okay, so between this phase, that is the period between the menarche and the menopause, is called as what? Reproductive period. So this is how the process takes place. Okay, now as I told you, if menstruation is not happening, then what is going to happen is the pregnancy or fertilization process. So now let's see the term, that is oogenesis. Okay, oogenesis is nothing but the formation of ovum. So as you know, like unlike the sperm is motile, but here the ovum is non-motile. Okay, and the size of the ovum also differs depending upon the animal. Like for human beings, it's different. For other animals also, if you see, it's different. And the yolk which is present inside the egg also will be in varying amount. Okay, so this particular egg is consisting of two coverings. Okay, two coverings. First is the inner one, which is basically thin, transparent, okay, and is called as zona pellucida. So this particular, what do you say, covering will be having proteins and sugar, and it is secreted by the follicle cells. Secreted by follicle cells. And the second one, which is called as the outer thick covering, called as corona radiata. So this is basically your white part of the egg and the yellow part of the egg. Okay, so how this happens is the oogenesis process is, first you will be having a germinal epithelial cells which is going to produce what? Primary oocyte or the egg. Then this egg is going to divide multiple times. Once the division happens, we get a secondary oocyte and a polar body. So this secondary oocyte will further divide, and it will give you what? Ovum or the egg. And the polar body will give rise to polar body only. There is no other thing which is developed from the polar body. Okay, so this is how the oogenesis process which is there, it takes place in a female reproductive system. So yeah, so as I told you, with this thing, a pregnancy or this when it occurs, okay, the further 9 months, there are different stages that a woman will undergo. Sexually transmitted diseases. Sexually transmitted diseases. It is STDs. So already we know about the population control, its methods and everything. And I told you in the Bayesian method itself, to prevent the STD, the Bayesian method is very useful. So now what if there is a certain STDs in a male or a female, what are those that we are going to see? So basically what is STD? So it is nothing but the infectious and communicable disease which are transmitted from infected to healthy person. To healthy person. But this will only happen if an protected copulation or mating will take place. And that also sexual contact only, the sexually transmitted diseases are passed. Okay, so generally what happens is there are different types of STDs, out of which we are going to learn a few things. Like the first one is gonorrhea. It's a kind of bacterial disease. Okay, so here there are certain like disease which we are going to see, like syphilis, warts, AIDS, and so on. Okay, so gonorrhea, then syphilis. Okay, syphilis is also a bacterial disease. Then AIDS. AIDS is viral. Okay, so let's see one by one about all the diseases. So the first one, which is very important, that is AIDS. So AIDS is generally caused by the HIV, which is nothing but the human immunodeficiency virus. So if a person is having AIDS, then the entire body will be, or the immune system will become weak. Okay, so that person will not be able to protect itself. Like self-care will not happen. Like for example, if we go out, okay, we'll catch some cold or fever or something, we'll get cured. Even if there is no medicine also, we'll get cured. But for such persons with the AIDS, what will happen is they will not have only that capacity to cure themselves, okay, without any medicines or anything. So easily, whatever diseases are there, they'll be prone to them. Okay, so AIDS full form is what? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Okay, and the virus which causes is called as the HIV virus. So if we see a particular overall brief information about the AIDS, it is nothing but, first of all, it's a sexually transmitted disease. Okay, only during the sexual intercourse only it will pass from one person to the another person. Secondly, I'll just write over here. Okay, it's a sexually transmitted disease. Secondly, whatever this virus is there, HIV, it is going to reduce the immunity. That is, the entire ability of a body to fight against the disease will be destroyed if that HIV is entered into the thing, and even that person may also die also. Fine. Then once that particular person gets infected by this virus, it is not going to leave the body and go. So the virus remains throughout the life. Throughout the life. Okay, so if that particular person who is having this HIV virus, okay, will copulate with any other person, that person also will get the same. Okay, then as I told you, it will not be able to fight against infections also. Not be able to fight against infections. Okay, and that person is been affected with HIV, it is like that person will not know immediately. Okay, only after, maybe it may take few years to detect that that person is having AIDS. Okay, so these are what certain kind of things which happens if that person is suffering from the AIDS. Okay, so as I told you, the transmission method of the AIDS are like, first one is the sexual contact. Transmission of AIDS. First is the sexual contact. Second is if that person has undergone certain blood transfusion, or say if a healthy person has been inserted with a contaminated needle which has been taken from this AIDS person, then also there is a transmission way. Okay, contaminated needles, or not only needles, blades, syringes, anything. Okay, means the blood remains on that particular thing. And again, if that particular thing is inserted into a healthy person, obviously the virus will get transferred. Then cuts or wounds. Okay, then the fourth chance is what? From mother to fetus. So these are all the transmission methods of the AIDS. Then the second important thing, which is gonorrhea. So gonorrhea, unlike AIDS, it's not viral, but it's a bacterial disease. Okay, again, sexual transmission through only this will pass from one person to another. Okay, so the incubation period for this is 2 to 10 days. Unlike the AIDS, as I told you, it may take several years. Okay, but here it's just 2 to 10 days. And some of the symptoms of this disease is inflammation of mucous membrane and urinogenital tract. Okay, that is pain during urination and all those stuff. Then female sterility, okay, means she may not be able to conceive. Okay, those are certain what symptoms of this particular gonorrhea thing. Okay, so again, the transmission which is there, or the risk of infection, it will again depend upon what? The number of exposures, as I told you. Okay, so these are the two important disease. Okay, that is AIDS, and the second one is the gonorrhea.